Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the last Monday of July. Everybody out in Facebook land, happy to see you. I am here with our special guest, Dr. Natasha Delince, and my battle buddy is on a plane traveling somewhere. I don't know where she is. How are you, Natasha?
I'm doing well. So good to see you, Miss Rosie. How are you?
I'm recovering, but I'm fine. Yeah, we keep talking about getting together, but life just gets so busy that we don't have any time. We owe each other a fishing trip and a horseback riding
Horseback
trip.
riding.
So,
Yes.
so we have two things to do.
Yeah.
You don't happen to like to cruise, do you?
I've only been on one cruise my entire life. I guess it would just depend on where it's going and what's going on the ship, maybe. I don't know. I'm not as experienced as at it as you are.
Yeah, well, we'll have maybe that's something that we should schedule is to do a
Yes.
cruise together. That would be fun. But somebody definitely would have to hold bail money. If we're going into a foreign country, we definitely need that.
Yeah.
So, Valerie, you're on the hook when you're watching this. I have to record this, otherwise, I won't be able to save it. So, Natasha, you were in our second cohort back the beginning of 2019. And man, tell us about you, tell us about your service, tell us about this journey you've been on because it has just been a joy to watch you. You are so motivated, and every time you reach another milestone within the time frame that you said you would do it, I'm just like, man, that girl is just killing it. So you have the floor. Tell us all about you.
Well, thank you very much, Miss Rosie. My name is Dr. Natasha Delince. I am the CEO and founder of La Mercy Healthcare. And La Mercy Healthcare is just a small organization right now, primarily a group home in Ruskin, Florida. My home is licensed for 5 residents. I mainly choose to serve those who are 65 and older. And again, we're in Ruskin. So the journey happened back in 2007 when I was in the military. I was in about over 7.5 years, almost 8 years, and my mom became ill with brain cancer. Um, and she was the person that took care of my daughter when I deployed. So she was what they refer to as my family care plan.
Right.
I was a single parent. So, with her being sick, that plan was no longer valid. That and wanting to take care of my mom, I got out of the military. So my mom ended up in a nursing home. And, with the brain cancer, it was really aggressive. She died 6 months from her diagnosis.
Wow.
Within that time, though, I got exposed to long-term care. I was a family member, didn't know anything about the healthcare industry, didn't know anything about anything. And just as a family member and going through that, in and out of the hospital, surgeries, radiation, chemo, it was just an experience that, I wouldn't wish on anybody, watching their family member go through that. Um, so in the midst of that, I wanted to take my mom home. I didn't want to leave her in the nursing home. And I decided to go for my CNA class while I was in. And unfortunately, my mom died before that. I was hoping that I would gain some skills, be able to take care of her at home, those kind of things. And in retrospect, there was no way I could take care of her at home.
Yeah.
But, I didn't want her to be in the nursing home. And eventually she went on hospice. And eventually she died at the hospital. So with that experience, I worked as a CNA for about 4 or 5 years. And during that time, I went back to school and got my master's in health administration, and decided to become a nursing home administrator.
This was a
So,
really impactful experience that you went from there, from where you were in the service, to experiencing your mom's health trauma and her passing, to not just saying you need to do something. You acted on every one of those steps. You were really focused at that point.
right, I think I always had the determination. It was just a matter of how do I get there? Um, it was 2012 when I actually got my company together, created my LLC back in 2012. So I
Wow.
always had the vision. It was always there. It was just a matter of how the heck do I get there?
Yeah.
Especially being a solo entrepreneur, not having any investors and those kind of things. Um, so the vision was always there. It was always there. So after my mom passed away, I became a nursing home administrator. I've been a licensed nursing home administrator since 2012. Um, I've worked in both the private and the public sector. So, I kind of, you know, have an experience that not too many people or too many people in my profession have with the experiences that I've gone through. But it's just helped formulate what I'm doing today. So
Hmm.
while I was a nursing home administrator, it wasn't until I was a nursing home administrator that I realized the other resources that were out there other than nursing homes.
Yeah.
you know, and you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Unfortunately, you don't know what you don't know. And so, I realized that there were hospice houses that were an option that I could have placed my mom in instead of the nursing home. There were regular residential homes that were licensed by the state for you to be able to take care of people who are end of life. And it just astonished me going through something like that no one at the nursing home, whether it was social services, the administrator, nursing, no one gave me the thought or the option to say, hey, there are these places that your mom could go.
Why do you think that was?
I think a lot of it is a multitude of things. Number one, that's just the way the system works. The hospitals tend to work with nursing homes and larger ALFs, maybe.
Right.
It could be that the social workers don't really know about those types of services. It could be that residential homes don't like to take people who are that sick, even if they're capable of taking care of them.
Right.
It's a whole multitude of things. Um, Also, insurance, that kind of thing. I mean, there's so many things that play into it, definitely. Um, so with that knowledge, knowing about these various types of other options that were out there, I said, this is a pain point, which I didn't learn that term until I was in your class. That's something that I can help with, even though I'm so small. I'm only 5 beds, but it makes an impact, a huge impact in the lives of the people that I serve, whether it's the resident themselves or their family members. So I started looking for properties at the end of 2018. And as you stated, I started your class like January, February of 2019. So
Right.
you have been there since the beginning, like the beginning.
Oh no, you had
Um,
7 years of thinking about this before you got to us. We just happened to be in the right place at the right time for
oh
you.
my God, you guys were a total godsend. I believe that things happen for a reason. And looking back, it was meant to happen the way it did,
Mhm.
definitely. So I finally closed on my house in March 2019. Um, and then it wasn't until January 2020 when I got my home actually licensed. Because remember all that back and forth with the fire marshal?
Yep.
It
Yeah.
took me 6 months, 6 months going back and forth with the fire marshal. But, everything worked out the way it was supposed to, except COVID happened March 2020. So
Right
with
after
COVID,
you got licensed.
right after, literally I got licensed like January 30th, 2020. And
Right.
the whole state shut down like March 19th
Right.
or something like that.
Yep.
So yeah, yeah, it was tough. It was tough
I
because
remember when you first got into the class in that January of 19, and we went around the room talking about what everybody was thinking of doing or doing. And because some of the people in your cohort were already in business, generating revenue. And I remember you saying that your goal was to complete this process before the end of 2019. And as I recall, on December 30th, you got the letter that you were all done and approved. Is that
yes,
correct?
yes,
You
yes,
made
it
it
was
in that year.
awesome,
And that was just, I use you as an
awesome.
example. If you said it, if you put it out there in the universe and you work toward it, it can happen. In your case, it might not still have, but it wouldn't have been through anything that you had to do. You had so many regulations and so many challenges with the fire department and all of
Yeah.
those other regulatory agencies, but you
Mhm.
did it. You did.
Yay,
So what
yay.
happened? What happened when the pandemic started?
So when the pandemic started, I was scared. I was scared of COVID. In terms of not knowing what it was, how the disease worked, that kind of thing. And I watched my mentor in the industry, and I watched them still, admit residents and take residents, but I was scared.
Yeah.
um, and I was still working at the time, so it wasn't detrimental for me to get clients in at that point. But I think I didn't start getting comfortable with actually wanting to take residents until the vaccine started coming out.
Yeah.
And so once the vaccine started coming out, that's when I really started to say, okay, it's time, it's time, it's time, which I think wasn't until like 2021, end of
Yeah.
2021. Rosie, it was 21 months from the time I got licensed before I got my first
Wow.
resident. 21 months. So in that 21 months, my business is in my home. So it's like every day I was reminded by the fact that I have a business that I can start getting going, but I can't, because of the pandemic, because of my fears. And then, I was here alone most of the time. My daughter was
Right.
out and about. And so, I had some time to do some serious self-reflecting, really, like, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? There was a lot of sadness, a lot of depression, a lot of self-motivating. So that was really an awakening in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was able to get my first resident, I mean, there was definitely some, trials there too, but we survived it and we
Yeah.
made it. Um, and it was the resident's sister that chose me. She came, we sat down, we talked, gave a tour, talked about my services, and she chose me.
Right.
In comparison to some other homes. So, that's when I started to realize too, it's not just about the resident, it's definitely about the families too. So that the families are able to sleep at night. The families
Right.
are able to, go on with their lives knowing that their loved one is in a safe location and being taken care of.
Right.
Um, I pride myself in communicating with my families and letting them know what's going on when it's happening in real time. That's just how I like to operate. And just, it's kind of like, it all sounds like a cliche kind of, but it's like they become your family too,
Of course.
you know?
Of course.
So,
If you're doing
so
it right, Natasha.
right,
You know,
right,
I'm sure that there are other operators who professionally do everything correctly and the way they're supposed to and provide excellent care. But what you bring to the table is that family experience because
right,
you feel that way. And I think a lot of that stems from the experience with your mom's end of life, that you don't ever want anybody to feel like you felt, I think.
right. Right, right. I definitely try to make it as comfortable as possible, especially when there's things that are happening that the family doesn't necessarily want to hear, but they have to hear.
Right.
I've experienced that too. And I just feel like I really do like coming, like you said, from that experience that I have that tender touch. I do. And
Yeah,
I
you
pride
do.
myself on it. Pride myself on that. And even working with the residents, I'll get, sometimes, they can be really ornery, they don't like to do things, they don't like to follow directions. But, once I work with them for a little bit, we get into a routine because that's what
Right.
it is getting into that routine. Especially for those residents who have dementia or like are very forgetful, routine is what they need.
Right.
So, and I don't have a problem working with those kind of residents either, because I guess coming from the nursing home, you have residents who tend to need more attention, things like that. So I'm okay taking residents who are a little bit difficult. But it's just such a satisfying thing from 2019 to now. And it's finally coming to fruition. And it's finally coming to the point now where, I can now become a full-time entrepreneur. And I am so excited to be able to move on to this next chapter in my life. So serious, so
That is
serious.
such a
Um,
monumental feat. Congratulations.
yeah,
There are so
Thank
many
you.
entrepreneurs that envision the day that they give up their main hustle to be able to, because they're what they've been building is now sustainable and they don't have to have that other. I am so proud of you and I'm so
Yay!
happy for
We had
you.
to celebrate.
Yes, we do. We'll talk about that bail money again in a minute. So you are now, or you are on the path to being just an entrepreneur, not an employee and a
Right,
business owner. So
right.
tell us
Just
about
using
that.
So I'm just using the rest of my time for some much needed, much needed R&R. So I'm really looking forward to just taking the month of August, which is my birthday month, just celebrating that, just celebrating life, just celebrating life. And then I'm hoping to have a full house by September.
Wow.
So that's when the real work is going to start. So
Of
I'm going to
course.
enjoy my month of August. Um, and I'm actually kind of sort of looking at some additional properties right now for my next location, because now I think I've gotten into the groove. I know
Yeah.
what my expectations are for myself and my business. I know the clients that I'm willing to serve. And in terms of like the business aspect, the money's coming in, the money's going out. I'm more comfortable with it now than I was 6 months ago.
Right.
And so I'm just looking forward to the future. I am so happy right now. So ask me in 4 weeks, how am I doing? Because it might be a different tune.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that there's going to be some adjustment, just as there was the entire time getting to this point. When you got that, when your first resident moved in, from that point to now, what things did you discover that you assumed about your business or the way you would run the business that actually ended up being different, and how did you make those adjustments?
So one of the things I envisioned for my business, I was talking about the structure. Waking up at a certain time, serving meals at a certain time, and things like that. And expecting, I don't know why I thought this, and expecting everything to go smoothly. Okay, this is how we're gonna do it. This is my setup. This is how I have it, and this is how we're gonna work it out. And it did not work out that way from day one with my first resident. It didn't. It's definitely an adjustment period for myself and the resident. More so for the resident because they're coming from home. And
Right.
most of my residents actually have come from the nursing home or larger assisted living facilities,
Oh, wow.
where a lot of my counterparts have gotten their residents from home. So that makes me feel better because they didn't know about these smaller residential homes and they ended up in large ALFs and nursing homes.
Right.
And it's a different experience. And I'm able to show and prove that. With being in a smaller home type setting, they get more attention.
Hmm.
They can have their likes and dislikes honored. Not that they can't have it in the larger facilities, but sometimes things get overlooked and not by anybody's fault, just
Right.
by the sheer number of residents that they have.
Right.
Um, if they want to go to bed at 9:30 instead of 8 o'clock, we can accommodate that. If there's any special shows, like literally, I would have it on a calendar. Okay, on Wednesday, we're gonna watch. What show was that? Oh my goodness, what show was that? The cleaner, I think it was. So I would have to put it on the calendar. Okay, on Wednesday at such and such time, we're gonna watch this, and we would watch it. One thing I will say kind of reminded me back in my childhood. We watched a whole lot of Jeopardy and a whole lot of Wheel of Fortune. Oh my God, that became our staple. We would have dinner, we would do some personal hygiene for bed, and then we would, all sit in the living room and watch Wheel of Fortune and all that other stuff.
That
So
is so funny you say that because I have not watched that show in forever. But I remember my mom watched it all the time. And I had been up in Ohio visiting my dad for a week, a couple of weeks ago. And every night when Wheel of
mm-hmm,
Fortune and Jeopardy came
yep.
on, it was, dinner was done and now we're competing against each other to do that. So I totally get that when you say
Yes, yes.
that.
And then it became surprisingly, one of those things that you say, in terms of it being different, surprisingly, I would participate and engage these things.
Yeah,
Where before, when my house was sitting empty, you do some work on the computer, and then, just the whole routine change. Even for
right.
me, the whole
And,
routine changed.
and I bet that wasn't a bad thing. in
Not at
retrospect.
all.
You
Right.
know, we tend to overwork when we're building businesses. We tend to be sitting in front of this little screen way more hours a day than is healthy for us to do that. So, not only do you have a business that is fulfilling the needs of people and their families in incredibly impactful ways, but I think the influence on you is good as well, because even though you're always on, you know, because they're there
Yeah.
24/7, but you've found those things that can, like watching Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune with your clients, and that, and any other things that you do with them, kind of takes you away from the pressure of the business so much, which we all need. We need,
Right.
I see your shirt. I see
Oh,
your shirt.
yes.
And, you know, Dr. Carlos Garcia, it's okay to not be
Yes.
okay. And he's the first one to always lecture on, you know, you have to take care of yourself first. You need those clarity breaks. You need those periods of time where you regroup, because first of all, life is hard, and second of all, building a business in your life is even harder. So, and you're doing it by yourself. So, I
Right.
mean, it's just a
Right.
challenge all the way around. So, aside from the fact that the routines didn't go as you expected, were there any other pleasant surprises about the way things happened that you didn't expect?
Yeah, my relationships with the families, definitely. I wasn't expecting that. I guess working in facilities, larger nursing homes, you have minute interactions with residents and their excuse me, with resident families. And when you do have interactions with them, a lot of times it's, um, a complaint,
Yeah.
they have a concern they want to share because, larger facilities, 120 beds, that's 120 family members and at least. So
Yeah.
I think one of the pleasant surprises was definitely interacting with the families and seeing the impact that I have. And it's so crazy because I've had families or one particular family member, cry like tears of joy, like, oh my God, like, this person now is so much better. Their aura, is brighter. Their eyes, there's a person there now.
Right.
I've heard those kind of things. And that was definitely impactful on me, I think. Um, and right now I have a younger resident, and just seeing her father come, and the interactions with her dad, and the dad said to me, wow, she hasn't said some of these things to me in a long time,
Oh,
you
wow.
know and so I'm like, holy cow, this is like bigger than me, bigger than, it's just God's will. That's it. It's just God's will.
I
I think
so
that's my
totally get
spiritual.
that.
And it's just this is the spiritual gift that God has given me. I recognize it, I acknowledge it, and then I'm ready to take it and run with it. And sometimes it doesn't always work out. I've had residents where it's just not a good fit, and that's okay too. But at least now the family's educated that there's
Right.
smaller homes out there. It doesn't have to be a nursing home or a large assisted living facility.
Right.
And that, you just have to find the place that's a good fit for your
Yeah.
family member. So it's not always, it doesn't always end in a good story, but my purpose is being fulfilled in that I have had the opportunity to educate,
Yeah.
which is important.
I beg to differ, though, that it doesn't end in a good story, because my experience with my mom taking care of my grandfather who had Alzheimer's had been in several different private homes. And the first few were not a good fit. And while that might have seemed like a bad ending, it led them to what was the perfect home. And so it wasn't that it was a bad outcome. It just wasn't, it was still a process to find the
Right.
right place. And I think every family that has to have this kind of has to utilize this kind of resource for a family member needs to recognize that it's not a catastrophe just because it didn't work out. It,
Right.
you learn, just like in business, you learn by things that don't work the way you expect them to. That's the process sometimes too. Sometimes you get lucky and it's perfect the first time. But
Yeah.
I think with your personality and with having had that experience yourself, you've probably been able to buffer the family from the hopelessness that could probably well up from, oh, we got to do this again.
Right, right. Definitely. And I think too, as I get more referrals, because they are picking up now, which is awesome, I'm able to be more honest and more and give the family members a more realistic picture of how my home runs and what my expectations are. Because I set expectations now from my first to my fifth resident. I tell the family members, no, this is how my home runs. This is my routine. There's some things that we can work on, but there's some absolutes that are not negotiable. That I definitely had to learn, definitely, because I live here. I live in
Right.
my group home.
Right. Yeah,
So
that
it's
has to have been a
24/7
learning
for me.
process for you. Yeah.
It's 24/7 with me. And fortunately, I haven't had any, thus far, any big blowouts with any family members or anything like that. But I think, again, that comes from the experience and setting those expectations up front first.
Right.
And then I do tell my family members, look, if you bring your loved one here, don't come for a few weeks. Let us get a routine. I provide, I have FaceTime capability. If you want to see your loved one, if that's what makes you feel comfortable, we can do a FaceTime or, some type of other video chat. So I provide them an avenue to still see their loved one, which well, again, that's what I do. But
Right.
a lot of times it's just to get them routine in their new environment, because that's definitely a struggle, especially if they're coming from a larger facility.
I
So
think even child care centers make those recommendations when you first start using them is, don't be one of those helicopter moms that are always hovering nearby.
yeah,
Give your child a chance. And I think it's the same at the other end of the spectrum.
yeah, definitely.
So, how many residents do you have now?
I currently have three, and I'm hoping, God willing, that September I will be full. That's my goal. That's my
Now, do
goal.
you do this all yourself? Are you on duty 24/7 or do you have additional assistance in the home?
Okay, so when I'm traveling for work, I tend to travel overnight for days at a time. So I have a caregiver here who is, caring for my residents. And then when I'm home, I tend to not have someone. But for this coming month of August, I will have several caregivers because
Yeah.
I need a hiatus, if you will.
Yeah.
This is totally a transition for me from being employed, trying to run a business, to now, being a solo entrepreneur. I just want to take some time because I know, come September, especially if I get my house full, it's going to be a lot of work. And I'm
Yes, it
okay
will
with
be.
it. I just want to take some time first as well. Take
It's
some
so
time.
funny. That's very, very good advice. When my ex-husband and I bought our food truck, I had booked us up for 6 solid months, almost every weekend. And before that started, we took a couple of cruises because it was like, we're not going to have a vacation for 6 months and we're going to be working our
Right.
tails off. So
Yes.
that's really smart of you to plan in
Yeah.
advance, and then plan the next one too, so that, you don't get caught up in a cycle where you're just like, well, I've got too much to do and I can't get away.
Right.
It's okay to be not okay,
It's
but
okay.
it's also okay to take care of yourself. And
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you're such a smart cookie. I don't think you're going to have any trouble with it.
Oh, thank you. But, and talking about that, just paying attention to my mental health, especially during COVID, it was hard. It was hard because, you were already isolated. The majority of my family is in New York. I had my daughter here, but my daughter was doing her own thing.
Right.
So I was here in this house staring at like four walls for 20 months, 18 to 20 months. And it was like, it was hard, and I'm not ashamed and I'm not afraid to say that, if I'm suffering through something, to go out and get some help and talk to people. I got my shirts from Dr. Garcia. It's okay to not be okay. And it's absolutely okay. It's
Yeah.
okay to not be okay. And it's okay to go and ask for help.
Hmm.
Um, it's okay to share, with people that you trust how you're feeling,
Yeah.
because chances are they've gone through something like that too.
And
And
we all did during this
yeah,
pandemic. the
Yeah.
adjustment when things shut down, and
Yeah.
now the adjustment when things are starting to open up again.
Yeah.
Having been comfortable in 2 years of doing this Zoom thing, and being isolated and not connecting with people. And then there's a little bit. I mean, we're all anxious to connect again. We're all anxious for the in-person events, but at the same time, it for me anyway, I'll only speak for me. At the same time, it's like there's some comfort in being my own little space here, There's I don't have to, and it's not just because I only have to wear a shirt and I can put whatever my pajama bottoms on if I want. It's just getting back out there again is as much a challenge as it was to stay in, I think. As much as we want the internet interaction, there's still always that fear. Maybe it's the fear of this new strain that's coming through the pike. So many of us were afraid to catch it.
Yeah.
I'm sure you did, and I do know people that didn't survive the pandemic in the early months, in the middle of 2020. And that really struck a lot of fear in us. So now, as we're moving out of those quarantines, and then these new strains come out, then we get that old fear starts to creep back in.
Right. Right. And I don't think COVID is ever going away.
No, I
It's
don't
always
think
going
so
to be
either.
here. And then it makes me look back, and I wouldn't say it's a regret, but I say to myself, well, what if I could have started sooner? Now that, we know what COVID is, excuse me, we know the different strands, we know how to treat it. We have medications now. What if I started sooner?
You
But
can't play that game though,
I
Natasha.
know,
You cannot play. You'll drive yourself crazy playing
I
that
know,
game. You just have
I
to
know.
understand things happen for a reason at the time they're supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And if you try to look at it any other way, you'll just drive yourself mad.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're on such the right path, and you've always been on the right path. You just kept diligently moving forward. I always say that. A lot of people in the program say, they're going much faster than I am. I'm just at a much slower pace. Well, slow is a speed. If
Yeah.
you're still moving forward, it's
Right.
okay. It's still
Right.
good. There's not a race. You're only in competition with yourself. You're not
Right.
in competition with
Right.
anybody else.
Yeah, and I try not to compare myself to other people because,
Well,
and
you are
because
quite unique, my friend.
well, what I mean is that, I've seen, like I said, I've seen some of my counterparts in the industry, they admitted their residents, they continued their operations during COVID. Did they have COVID in there? Yeah, absolutely, but they dealt with it, and I've seen other counterparts where they're working on their third, their fourth group home, and I'm like, but it's just not for me. If it hasn't happened yet, that means it was not meant for me at this point in time.
Right.
And that's what I just keep telling myself. I've had people tour my home and they say, oh, well, it's not going to be a good fit. And I said, well, okay, that resident wasn't meant for me,
Right.
so you just move on, I guess. So,
This is such a healthy attitude.
yeah.
So, what would I imagine you could probably share a million pieces of advice, but what would you share with anybody that's just starting on their entrepreneurial journey? They're working on their idea, maybe not even generating revenue at this point, but are facing kind of the challenges that most new business owners face, and it's a matter of degree. If you're opening up a group home, the regulatory things are going to be your biggest obstacles, but every business has challenges. What advice would you give to those that are starting out, that they might need to hear, that you appreciated hearing or needed to hear when you were first starting, maybe back in 2012?
I feel for any entrepreneur, if there is something that is inside of you that you want to do, whether it's a product or a service and it's in there, continue, go for it. It will grow. As you learn about it, as you study it, you find how you will be able to provide that product or service. It's in there. If it's in you for a reason, I guess is what I'm saying. It's in you for a
Yeah.
reason, whether it's through an experience or maybe something that you saw someone else go through, whether it's like I said, whether it's a product or person, keep going. Don't stop unless you find something else that you like to do, that's better, or for whatever reason. If it's in you, it's in there for a reason, and keep going. 2012 was when I formed my company. 2012, not knowing what it was going to be, how it was going
Right.
to end up. I didn't even, think about group homes, residential group homes in 2012, but I knew I wanted to do something. And it's 10 years later, literally 10 years later,
Yep.
February 2012 was when I formulated my company.
Wow.
And just keep going. Don't stop. If it's in your heart and it does not go away, keep going. You know, uh, surround yourself with like-minded people. Okay. If you have those doubters, whether it's family or friends, cut them off.
Yeah.
Cut them off. You don't, I'm so serious. Just love them at a distance, love them from a distance. Surround yourself with like-minded individuals who will support you and tell you if something's not going to work, and
Mhm.
tell you if something, like you and Valerie have told me many times, you know, and but it's the truth. Surround yourself with like-minded people and keep going. If that spirit is inside of you, keep it going.
I think I like that you made the point that if you find something different, I think at least one individual in every cohort, and we've now done 11 cohorts at Action Zone, and we've at least one person in each one of those cohorts has been working on an idea, even in one or two cases was generating revenue in that idea. But over the course of building out that business model and figuring out how things fit together, they discovered that that really isn't what they wanted to do, or something new presented themselves during
Mm-hmm.
all of that discovery process, and they're like, oh, this is it, this is it. And it's okay to make those changes. You're building something that presumably, depending on where you are in life, for me, I'm building something. I'm never going to build another thing after this, because I'm old and crusty, and this will be the last
Oh,
thing I
don't
do.
say
this
that,
will be my
Rosie.
big this will be my big horizon. And then I actually, it's not even because I'm old and crusty. It's because I know that this is my passion and that there's nothing else that I want to do. This is it. But for other people who might be younger, they or just still figuring out what they want to be when they grow up, and you can do that at 60. That's okay. There are people at 80 that still don't know what they want to be when they grow up, and that's okay. They
Yeah.
still have time. So that was great advice to say,
Yeah.
just keep pushing forward, because
Yeah.
either it's the idea that you've got, or it's going to be an iteration of that, or you're going to discover that
Right.
that isn't your passion.
Right.
You need to start something else altogether.
And just like you said, if you have one idea, you pivot. How many times have we pivoted?
Yep.
But the thing is that it started somewhere,
That's
and they
right.
didn't give it up. They kept
Yep.
going and said, "Oh, maybe that's not it." But you know what I mean.
Yep.
So
And that feeling that you have about wanting to do something
yes,
never goes away. When you
yeah,
get bit by the entrepreneurial fairy, you are infected for life. I
yeah,
don't know. I'm sure that there are people that tried to start a business and did not succeed, and so they never tried again. I'm hopeful that that's because they discovered that they really don't want to be in that kind of responsible position for their own um, growth. But in some cases, it's because they're too afraid to start again. And
yeah.
that's the saddest part. If you fall, you get up and you
Right.
keep moving forward. Maybe you're walking in a different direction, but you still get up. And it's not, fail often and fail fast and fail often, but
Yeah.
it is the mantra. But it does teach you so much.
And it's funny that you say that, because the first class that I had in the cohort, the first class, the takeaway was, you're going to fail at something at some point. And let me tell you, that stuck with me the entire time. I have my doctorate in business administration. And, I said that to you and Valerie before, that what we took out of your class, you can't learn in academia. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? The exercises and the tools that you guys provide us in those classes, like, and that was the first takeaway, and it stuck with me ever since. And whether I have 2, 4, 5 homes, I'm gonna fail along the way, and it's okay. It's okay.
Well,
you
I
know?
don't know whether to apologize that we gave you such a traumatic first impression, or if I'm grateful that you got the message and just still kept moving forward.
Yep.
Because that's really the key, is, we, and for military community entrepreneurs, that's a really, really hard lesson. Failure's never an option when you're in the military. And
Right.
so you come out of the military and we're telling you you're gonna fail, or you're gonna make a bad decision, or you're gonna make the wrong turn. And that's okay because you can adjust. And as long as you've got that model in front of you and you understand where you're going, you can make those adjustments. And that can be really a challenge, more so for military entrepreneurs, I think, than any others that I've worked with. And, I was doing entrepreneur workshops for AARP for quite a while. And most of them were much older than 65. I know we could have taken 45 and up, but I had one lady that was 82. She'd already had 7 businesses and she wasn't done yet, she said. She
Right.
wasn't, and I understand that completely. But that group was like, oh, I've failed so many times in my life, it's not a big consequence. If this doesn't work, I'll just try something else. But when you come from a profession like the military, where failure is life altering and life changing and life could be life ending, that concept of failure is incredibly frightening and to be avoided at all cost.
Right.
So I'm glad that you got that message, and I'm hopeful we should have you come in and speak about that at the first.
I'll have the time to do it now.
Yes, you will. Yes, you will. Well, do you have any other advice you want to give to anybody? I know I knew that we were going to run longer than normal. We don't have a time frame, but I knew you and I are get together. Thank God Valerie's not here, or we'd still be chatting.
I would just say, don't give up. Let me tell you, don't give up. I mean, I have a story, and I'm finally at a point where I'm comfortable to share it. I was a high school dropout. I got pregnant at the age of 14. I had my child at 15. I joined the military, which was, I think, my saving grace, or else my sister will tell you that. She's the one that encouraged me to join the military, and she'll always tell you she fixed me. That's all she says. And
had nothing to do with your drill sergeant or your CO,
no,
right?
No, it was all my sister. She gave me the idea. And I was a young mom. I was a young single mom. Just, dealing with some mental issues, in my adult life. And I'm finally in a good place. And just keep going. Keep going. Surround yourself with like-minded people that will support and encourage you. Even if you don't talk to them all the time, but just have that lifeline, that one person that you can call and just vent. And just keep pushing. Set goals, set realistic goals, and work towards those little steps at a time.
That's the key. Yeah, take the baby steps, because then they all equal up to the big ones and they're not nearly as challenging. Well, I am sorry that this is the first time we've had a chance to really talk in months, but I'm so glad that you were able to be our guest today. I'm so proud of you, Natacha. You are just such an inspiration, and I do definitely want you to speak to, now that you have the time, or will have the time. I won't ask you in August because I know you're taking free time. But for all of the rest of you, you know that I can't look at the Facebook chat. So if you said good morning, I'll make remarks when I get off. I'm going to be putting a link in the chat. We have quite a few cohorts coming up over the next 6 to 9 months. By the time we get to this time next year, we will have completed maybe 18 cohorts for Action Zone in 4 years. So, and we want you to be a part of it. And Natacha's story is not atypical. It is a place where you can learn what you don't know and be comfortable knowing that you're wandering into the unknown, and we're not going to let you drown. We're going to be there with you and help guide you with what you need to know. And we've got a great team. You all know, anybody that is new here won't, but all of you know that between me and Valerie, her husband Jeremy, who is the best at teaching financial, knowing your numbers workshops. And then, of course, Dr. Russ Barnes. And you'll be meeting some new facilitators probably in the next few months that are going to help us both in South Florida and in Tampa as we continue to grow. So I'll put the registration link in the chat. If you are not interested, you probably know a veteran or military spouse who is, so please share it. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us on our Facebook page, Action Zone Tampa, or on our website, Action Zone Tampa, and we'll get back to you. So Natacha, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful week. I will think if we don't get together to fish or to go horseback riding sometime in August, I hope you have a wonderful month and just do whatever makes you happiest.
Thank you.
Because you're going to be
It was great to see you
on September 1st.
Yes, I am.
So
Bye.
I love you, girlfriend. I look forward to seeing you the next time. And have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next Monday. Bye.